Okay, on today's video, I'm going to talk about third-party cookies and basically how that affects PPC if you're running PPC campaigns on Facebook, Google, any other PPC network, Programmatic Ad Networks, stuff like AdRoll, Taboola. I'm going to talk about how the quote-unquote death or stoppage of what are third-party cookies on various different places, on browsers like Google Chrome, like on devices like Apple, how that it's, like I said, affecting your results. In some places, for some people and some of our clients here at our agency, we've noticed a huge drop in the performance. So if you're wondering, basically, Corey, is something to do with third-party cookies affecting my results? Well, I'm going to answer that for you here on today's video and basically explain how much of an effect it actually will have on your results if you fall into that camp where you're doing something that was more vulnerable to the third-party cookie removal kind of, I'll just call it a trend, because it really has been a trend for the last few years. There's been a slow move away from these what they call third-party cookies. And also going to give you actual alternatives to you, so that if you do also fall into that category where it's been affecting you and your PPC results, how you could just simply divert that money to another place, basically pick up what you had before for the most part for most people. So anyway, here's how to deal with the changes from third-party death of third-party cookies, and the PPC results changes that you see from it or because of it. So as usual in my videos, I'm going to talk about an overview of what this background of what I'm talking about is first, so you understand if you're not quite fully clued in on cookies, what they are, what they do, how they tie into PPC, that kind of stuff, before I go into all the pros and cons of using them versus not, or in this case relying on them or not relying on them, and then your alternatives and what kind of results and stuff you'll see by doing some of these alternatives I'm going to mention to you, and so on and so forth. So anyway, first is first, what are third-party cookies to begin with and why it matters? So third-party cookies, so there's two different types of cookies. First-party cookies, third-party cookies. First-party cookies, an example of that will be, first of all, I'll go one step backwards here first. A cookie, basically what that does is it picks up user data from users of web browsers, of websites, of devices out there that you may use, like a phone, and what I would call just metadata. So what you've been doing, we're in a surveillance economy. The data is the new oil. If you have heard that term before, that's because a lot of different products and services out there that are can basically just be free, and you become the product. They pick up information about what you're doing and then they sell it to other people. Sometimes they pick up data about what you're doing and then they use it to market to you directly. If they use your data, they pick up on you and basically surveil you, there's no easy or light way to put this. They're spying on you. They use that to it's almost like a good salesperson will be able, the reason why they can sell well is because they can read a person. They can read how you're feeling and how you're thinking, how you're emotionally feeling, and use that against you. And almost like to the point where they know you better than you yourself and tell you what you want to hear so that you'll give into what they want. Well, with computer systems and algorithms and all that, the same thing can be done digitally and in an automated fashion, picking up on things that you're doing. Facebook and so on and so forth has been doing such stuff, even such as if you upload a picture to Facebook, whether you're smiling or frowning, that data is going to be used to serve you an ad that may be an ad from vendor A that they're working with, or partner A versus partner B, because partner A knows that they could sell their product to people that are in a manic state versus in a depressed state. All the kinds of stuff like that's going on. And if you want to know more about that, just look up the surveillance economy on YouTube. You can find out lots of information about that. But first-party data, if Apple is collecting information on you, Apple's going to then market something to you or cater something to you on their particular product so that because now they know more about how you want to use their product so that you become glued in on the product more. And then third-party cookies are going to be a device, or it's a utility, a tool, if you will, to collect data on you so that they could take that data and sell it to somebody else. And yes, that seems outrageous to somebody who don't understand how this stuff works, but literally speaking, you can have an app, a weight loss app that you make, and you charge nothing for it, and you enter your weight in on a given time, and somebody else that wants to sell you a diet product, they want to know how engaged you are about and serious you are about losing weight, so they buy their information from that diet app, and that would be a part, like a third-party data transfer. And there's different ways to do that, one of which is cookies. Most of the way that it's been done is through cookies. So now you understand what a cookie is, what a first versus a third-party cookie is. I can get into a little bit more about what the changes were that have occurred recently and will be soon changing, and how that's going to affect the advertising space, advertising your business. So, basically, yes, this is complicated. You're saying, why do I need to know all this to, just to advertise my business? Well, for all practical purposes, you don't. You can just take my game plan here to move forward with it, but at least I'm going to give you a little bit of a background here so you understand why I'm telling you to do what you're doing. So take it for what you will. Anyway, moving forward, so there's basically what and there's a lot of information about cookies out there. I think I have a knack for breaking stuff down to just get the need to know information for a business owner that watches this channel, or potential entrepreneur that wants to do PPC advertising for that business, for that new idea, to give you just the need to know information and to simplify it for somebody who's not a programmer, which most of these articles about cookies are technical, and a programmer or someone with a background like that, technical background, can understand it. I'm trying to make this easy to understand if you have basically almost no technical background. So that said, cookies, generally speaking, and I've touched on this at the beginning of the video, they're set at kind of three different levels, if you will. There's an advertiser/site level, so a site can track you using a cookie. You have a browser, and the browser, web browser like Google Chrome, or using Internet Explorer, or so on and so forth. They can track your activity on that browser, and for the purposes of marketing, or to be able to do something with you or to you via that browser, or sell it to somebody else. Third-party cookie, which is what that would be again. And then you also have the device level, or OS level. That would be like Android, Apple, or even Microsoft. If you're using a PC, we would just say Microsoft. And so there's three different kind of, I guess, opportunities for businesses out there to collect data on you, given that you're interacting with a device, a browser, a website, and whatever actions you have can be recorded. And so those are the three main places they do it from. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go through each one and let you know who's using what and kind of how that affects you. But long story short here, the big winner in the deletion or move away from third-party cookies is going to be Google, overwhelmingly. Why? Because they have their most first-party cookie data. And so if you don't want to watch the video, the answer to most of your problems is simply going to be, if you want to keep it simple and you're advertising on some other place right now, particularly Facebook, use Google advertising. And a lot of people don't think Google Ads is just the ads on Google. No, they have Google AdSense, which is hooked up to Google Display Network, which lets you advertise on basically almost 90% of the web out there, which you can do through your Google Ads account, then you can also, of course, advertise on Google through Google Ads if you got an account, but you can also advertise across the web. So if you want to advertise to more of the people that are just searching on Google, which you should if you have a business, there's definitely, for most businesses out there, an opportunity to do that. Similar than how Facebook works, in that you're advertising to people who aren't actively searching for what you do, and can be even more profitable than Google, given that it takes a little bit more finesse to do that. But Google is the winner in this, and they're going to start using, because they own the Chrome browser. Google Chrome is 56% of the browser market. they're going to move away from cookies. They haven't done it yet. They said they were going to do it in 2021 this year, and then they pushed that back to 2023. So, but they've caused enough disruption in the market that for all practical purposes, you know, the poo-poo has hit the fan already, and a lot of people, you know, things have went AWOL in terms of advertising that worked and the versus didn't work. And so, you know, basically they have most of the cookies are collected on the browser level. Out of these three different categories, the browser is what most cookies out there that are used for advertising, and how to make advertising better, so you know more about who you're marketing to and their purchasing habits and their search behavior and so on and so forth, than you know, the device, even though the device too, of course. And so they have now all the activity that you have on google.com, so they know what you're searching for, what you're interested in. They have all the sites that, you know, have banner advertising on it that's run through Google AdSense, which is almost 90% of the market there, to gather user data from, per se. And they have this the number one browser on the market. So they have the most first-party data than basically anybody out there. And so they're coming up with their own replacement for a cookie, so that they could quote-unquote make sure that users have their privacy, which is why they're doing it. But in effect, or long story short, places like Facebook that relied on data from Chrome, and people that would have apps that would work with Chrome that they could purchase data from, let's say, they're not going to get that data anymore soon. But then also Facebook has already been hit heavily by the fact that Apple now will not, that does not allow third-party cookies. And so that happened this year, and that crushed results on Facebook to almost have the results for several people I've talked to now. So if you wonder why your Facebook results have went down the toilet, you know, in this year, in 2021, and more so it's going to be in the future, it's because of the Apple and then, you know, Chrome, so that it'll take it even further to the point where the glory days of Facebook really may be over. So with that said, you know, there's other advertising networks out there, obviously, other than Google and Facebook. There's sites like AdRoll. AdRoll specializes in remarketing. Remarketing through AdRoll ain't going to be affected because they use first-party cookies, and that you have to set, if you advertise through AdRoll and using remarketing, which would be advertising that shows up for a user after they leave your site. That's all done through first-party cookies, and you set a cookie on the user's browser, but it's your, you know, it's AdRoll's cookie, and so you can do that. What AdRoll requests you to do it still, though, because of the new privacy laws, is have a privacy policy that says you're collecting cookies, but you're using that data to market to the user directly, so it's okay. Sites, you know, advertisers like Taboola also have remarketing, which would be follow the same thing there, but you also can advertise to people but their advertising is targeting people who are on certain websites. They don't go into the advertising where you're able to see exactly what that person has done for the last 90 days, what they clicked on, what they searched for, what they, you know, what apps they clicked on, what they typed in on their phones, which is why Facebook works so good, because they got all this data from Apple, and so now they don't have it anymore. And so if you're using an advertising network, you could just, if you use something else, you just search, is it relying on third-party cookies? And with that, you should know that whatever you were relying on is not going to be working near what it was in the past. Now, there are some exceptions I would explain in a moment, but that's kind of the general overview of, you know, at Google. As far as results did not go up, but the Facebook results went down a lot, and they're going to go down even more as Google totally turns the tap off on this Chrome. So that's the main thing that you need to take away from this video. But Firefox browser has not allowed users to collect third-party cookies for a while. Safari also no, and that makes up for most of the browsers out there. So Facebook and other advertising networks that want to get cookie data from the browser that you're using that shows what websites you're going to and so forth, or they're out of luck. They can't get it from there anymore. and they're not going to be able to get it from Apple anymore. And Android, people use Chrome mostly on Android, so they're not going to be able to get, for the most part, if from the browser, they're not going to be able to get data from there. Technically, from Android, they could get third-party data, and then so that still exists. And then from Microsoft, they can get third-party data as well. But you'd have to be a pretty big company to partner and tap into Windows 10 or whatever, to be able to get the third-party data from them. So, for all practical purposes, there are some places where you can get third-party data to power advertising that may have relied on it before, but there's getting to be less and less all the time, and eventually, the way things are going, there's not going to be any. And so there's replacements. There's a thing called fingerprinting, where some of these places like Facebook are going to try to invent technology to replace the third-party cookies so that they can get data from other places, which is what has made their advertising work so well. But for the most part, that's not in place yet, and who knows if that's actually going to work. Fingerprinting, basically, they're going to try to identify you, the user, what you do, other than using the cookie. You've done this, this, and this, and we're going to profile you as a person based upon you doing these select things as a group. That's what fingerprinting is. But anyway, moving on from all that, just want to continue to let you know a few more things about third-party cookies and how that's going to affect your advertising, PPC advertising moving forward. The browser data /history is key in third-party advertisers with very much of their own data. So I'm trying to think what. Cut that part. So basically, what this is referring to is advertisers like Facebook that primarily needed to look at third-party data to be able to get to make their advertising work. They took a big hit in 2021, and it's going to continue to go downhill. So like I already kind of explained that before, Facebook being the biggest one that people use that relies heavily on third-party data, and and it has been actually. Facebook has had less and less leverage to use third-party data outside of even cookies. Working with the first hit with Facebook came when they couldn't privacy issues with the Cambridge Analytica scandal, could not get and chose not to buy data from sites companies like Cambridge Analytica that had user profile data on you. That the database and warehouse, companies like Axiom who have your purchase history that they buy from credit card companies, which made their ads work. And then now this year, on top of it, third-party cookie data from Apple just got shut off, and soon it's going to be shut off from Chrome, so it's just going to further go downhill and downhill. And so what I would recommend to you if you're doing Facebook or anybody who relies on this third-party data is start trying to use Google. Because they're the behemoth that doesn't have to rely on the third-party data. And for all practical purposes on the web, if all you're going to do is target somebody based upon what site they're going to go to, and you don't know anything else about the user or what they've searched for before, so on and so on and so on and so on, the advertising is a lot harder to get to work. I mean, you can make, if you sell fishing rods and you can make a deal to have your advertising on a site that talks about how to buy and reviews fishing rods. Now that would be good. You wouldn't need quote-unquote third-party data. But the whole trend of the easy set it and forget it, I'm going to advertise on Facebook, and Facebook's going to figure out for me who has been looking for information on buying a fishing rod in the last 30 days. That's coming to an end. So then there's another category of advertisers out there called the programmatic advertising ad networks. And so what these networks do is they relied on third-party cookie data as well, kind of just like on how Facebook ad model works, kind of, to make their advertising work well, the way that I described it. And they would get, information from apps, which I didn't really mention here, but apps is if we had a fourth category, it's another place people buy data from. But through the apps, the app would sell the data using a cookie. to a third-party cookie a lot of times, but there's also other ways to do that. Sell the data to the programmatic ad network companies to be able to advertise, and that would be banner advertising traditionally that could be done outside of Google's display network. And the reason why people would do that is because, for instance, if you sell duct tape, let's just say, to give you a quick example, if you wanted to advertise to people who have been or been on the site of Ace Hardware, True Value Hardware, where people normally would go, and they're the DIY type of person that often goes to those places, those companies will sell data to the programmatic ad network, a specialized one that deals with perhaps people that sell a DIY product, so that you could then, that company that then specializes in targeting people who go to hardware stores a lot can go to a company who sells a product in a hardware store, and then that will get them highly relevant users to put your ad in front of, and then not having to go to set it up on a site that's about duct tape at that point. You're then again going back to profiling the person, knowing that person goes to hardware stores a lot where the duct tape is normally bought, and then with that and through the programmatic ad network, you can, when that person's on a site that the programmatic ad network has linked up with, like a CNN.com, you can have that ad show up for the person then that goes to hardware stores a lot, and get your ad for duct tape on that website. And so, because the third-party cookie data is going away, that's going to hurt most of this industry. So if you're relying on it now, again, with that situation, I would look into doing Google Display Network advertising, because you're safe. They have enough first-party data. You're not going to have to worry about that. However, there's going to be some workarounds there, of course. They're not a $1 billion a year industry, roughly speaking, isn't just going to go down the toilet and disappear overnight. They're going to come up with some different ways around it. Particularly, they're going to have through the websites itself. So, like an example that I gave you before, Ace Hardware, they can take for instance, your cookie so if you want to advertise to people that have been to acehardware.com, well, you could make a direct deal with Ace to have your advertising on that site, so on and so forth. But there's other ways to collect data outside using a cookie, as I described before. One of which, if you're wondering why you go into a store and every time you check out at the checkout counter, they want to know if you would sign up for their loyalty program. Well, the whole point of that is to grab your data. Of course, they want to use it to sell to you, which would be a first party selling or using of that data. Well, a lot more of it is going to be selling that data to somebody else who wants access to your customers. And at that point, then you got a database, that person's first name, last name, email address, so on and so forth, of that particular person that's a customer at your store, so that person, again, who wants to buy the duct tape, to sell the duct tape, then you can get in front of that person, because now you have that person's email address. And if you have that person's email address, then you can go to another website that has login, and people that have to log in. And when they log in using that email address, you can have set up then at that point so that if that site also has advertising, have your ad for duct tape show up there on that website. And that would not require a cookie or third-party cookie in that case. So there's other methodology to be able to collect user behavior, in other words, on a user, and then knowing that you have to have a person with a certain level of coordinated behavior and traits in order for your product, given the cost of the advertising, to make sense, then that will be a way for this whole industry, this programmatic ad network industry, to work around the issues of the third-party cookies. If there was no more third-party cookies, and we had to go back to the old days of like 1998, where basically you buy banner ad space on a website directly, the cost of the advertising is going to have to go down a lot, because knowing that you have to have somebody who's been to Ace Hardware in the last 30 days, and that person's a DIY attitude type person, and that person has he has an app that gives tells you the amount of board feet you need for certain construction projects, and you have a whole list of requirements. And then if they fit all these requirements, then you know that that person's the right fit for your advertising. That ad, when it's served to that person, can be worth and can be charged by the website that has the advertise on it. They can charge like $1, and that leaves some money left over for the intermediary programmatic ad network to also take a cut, and for the person who advertising will pay $1 because it's now that much more effective. Everybody wins. When it's not targeted, you know, and you're just, you know, the best you can do is just get on a site that talks about, you know, let's say there's not very, if you sell duct tape, there's not very many sites that talk about reviews of duct tape. So now you're stuck on advertising on sites that talk about, like, maybe it's a construction deck building forum. Well, that person, just knowing that they're on the forum and they like to build decks, that's you know, the statistical likelihood that person's likely to buy the duct tape at that point is way, way, way less. Maybe 5% of knowing that they're on the, you know, that particular forum, and they have 10 other traits that we can then, through the accumulation of data that we're buying from a bunch of third-party sources, and then therefore can charge $1 for a click versus 5 cents to have that advertising still be worth it to the person buying it at the end of the day. So I know they got a little bit more technical than you probably wanted on this video, but I also wanted to just explain how all this is going to be affected. If you're dealing with a programmatic ad network, I'm going to make a video about programmatic ads and ad networks versus Google Display Network. And there's other reasons why, if you are using programmatic ad networks, to use Google anyway, and not, one, to just not have all your eggs in one basket, but two, because of this third-party ad network, and three, there's other reasons as well. I'm going to go through all those. So for all practical purposes, you want to sum up the moral of this video is start looking into using Google, because that's going to be the future. They're the one with the most data. The one with the most data on your users is going to be going to be the company that's going to be able to get you the customer at pretty much the cheapest rate. Obviously, Google can raise their prices knowing that their targeting is better, but for all practical purposes, most products out there, you got to know more about your users other than just the website that they're on for it to work. This is what Facebook's empire has been built on. So now you understand why your results are not going to be as good on Facebook or any other networks that use third-party cookies moving forward. Got hit this year and will be hit even more going into 2023, with Chrome also does not allow any third-party cookies at all for sure again anymore either. So if you were making $1 million a year with Facebook advertising in 2018, and then you were making $500,000 because of what changes were made between 2018 to 2019 in there, and then this year you got to $200,000, you might be down to $50,000 after 2023. Third-party cookies are just gone pretty much everywhere. So that's in terms of results, what you're dealing with. Whereas anything that works on Facebook or anything that works on these programmatic ad networks will work on Google, because Google at the same time has stepped up their game in the level of profiling of users. So if you want to target people who are normally go and they eat lunch out every day, they have a targeting setting just for that. If you want to know somebody who's getting married soon, they have a targeting setting just for that. So Google, at the same time of moving away from these third-party cookies that hurt everybody else, they're stepping up their game so that they're basically indistinguishable from this programmatic ad networks and Facebook, and what gave them their edge over Google before. So everything is trending towards Google at the end of the day, long story short. Hope you enjoyed this video. I have a ton of other videos that talk about specific money-making strategies as it comes to PPC. If you haven't looked at any of those, you should check them out. I have also a blog at guaranteedppc.com/blog that has step-by-step instructions on how to build PPC campaigns that make money the way that I do for our clients here, in which we guarantee the results from. If you want to learn how to do PPC the best way possible, I recommend that you check that out. If you have any questions about third-party cookies, anything you thought could be a little clearer or I didn't cover, leave a comment down below. I always get back to every person who leaves me a comment on this channel. But apart from that, I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you got a lot out of this, and you use the information to avoid hitting the iceberg in the course of maintaining the sales and growing the sales in your business using online advertising if you heavily rely on it now, especially if you rely on Facebook or anybody that uses third-party cookies.